good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the beautiful planet of ours and joining us. And whenever you're listening, welcome to the 100 Connected podcast. I am Hanneke Mackie from Buzz Kids in South Africa, and I am standing in for Annette de Graaf, who usually takes the lead in our podcast chats. And as usual, we have some of our sidekicks and co-hosts here. We have the beautiful friend Sherelle from Kenya, from Cheza Cheza, with us this morning.
Hi, everyone. Yes, calling from very sunny, very hot, but also very beautiful Kenya today. So happy to bring some sunshine in today.
Thanks for being with us, Sherelle. And of course, from probably a little bit less sunny Helsinki, Finland, we have our beautiful Alex Shapiro.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Here in Helsinki, it is decidedly not sunny and decidedly not hot. So let's get into a much sunnier conversation instead.
Alex is from 100, the organization under whose umbrella we're here today, that brings together every year the 100 most innovative education solutions for the world, making a great impact. And then we have actually a personal friend of mine here today. So I'm really, really, really happy to introduce you all to the beautiful Gareth Thomson from Resolute Education. And Gareth is just a stone's throw away from me. I'm here in Johannesburg, South Africa, and you can actually hear a hardider in the background. And Gareth is in Pretoria, and he's the co-founder of an amazing organization called Resolute Education. And wherever I turn in South Africa, there's Resolute. Signs are up there at every single second school, and they're really, really cornering the market for robotics and coding in schools in South Africa. Gareth is a co-founder with Rajesh. You're going to tell us more about Rajesh. Gareth actually comes from the world of engineering. He's going to tell us a little bit about his background in a second, and also about what exactly it is at Resolute that you are responsible for. But just to introduce Resolute properly, Resolute Education is a South African-based company, offers educational products and services focused on robotics and coding. They make these subjects accessible, affordable, and engaging for both students and educators. It's easy for inexperienced teachers to facilitate and ensure that the students develop essential digital skills in an interactive and enjoyable manner. I'm going to let you tell us more about yourself, your engineering background, and how Resolute came to what it is today, and a little bit more about how you work and what kind of sets you apart in a world of a lot of suppliers and a lot of companies in the robotics and coding space here in South Africa, because I can tell you all, they are everywhere and they are really making an impact. So over to you, Gareth. Tell us everything. Take us right back to the beginning about you and this beautiful company.
Shame. Thank you so much, Hanika. That was an amazing introduction. I don't think there's much more I can add at this point. No, I'm joking. But yeah, no, thank you. So yeah, just to talk a little bit about myself first, and then we can talk into Resolute. Yeah, so I'm an engineer by trade. I'm actually a student of dyslexia, so I'm part of the neurodivergent crew. And when I fell in love with coding and robotics, or specifically coding, was my first year in a mainstream school, which was grade 10. So I was in remedial schools or specialist schools all the way up until grade 10. And I first wrote Hello World in my first little bit of programming, and I got to see how things started to get built. And it changed my view of education, was that ability to build something and fail, and then try again and fail without having any human intervention stopping me from ideating and iterating through ideas. And that's when I really started to fall in love with education, because it wasn't something that was dependent on somebody else to give me a pass or a fail. It was dependent on me. And that sort of ownership was really on me. So whether or not I could read a book or understand even the code that I was typing in, there was something that was just bounce, and it would allow me to fail forward, not fail backwards. And that's a big thing that we try to give to students, is that ability to fail forward. It also employs a lot more critical thinking than traditional subjects. A lot of traditional subjects, you're waiting for somebody to give you affirmation, and that doesn't always allow for critical thinking because it's dependent on the person. So that was something that really motivated me, and then that pushed me into engineering. Like, put aside the whole dyslexia and what people told you could do. Overcoming that was something that empowered me. And yeah, then in engineering, I met Rajesh Pasangili for the surname. That was where we sort of met each other, and his story is very, very different. He was a star student, very athletic. Me, I don't know how to kick a ball kind of guy, but his story was he rocked up at university and he asked his dad, what is he doing? And his dad registered him for electronic engineering, in typical Indian household where, you're told what to do. He wanted to do medicine. And through these two different views on education and this view of what industry is expecting from young engineers, from young adults to be able to excel in this world, it was quite interesting. Our approaches is he was not technical, but he was doing something technical. I'm technical, but I would say I lack a lot of what other kids take for granted, which is literacy and the ability to communicate properly. Through that, we sort of realized there's still quite a bit of a gap between what industry is expecting, what universities are trying to achieve, and where kids are leaving high school. Yeah, I'm sure we've all got our gripes with high school. It's not all bells and whistles, and it is the most impactful period of your life. But that's what sort of kicked us off. Practical learning, something that allows you to fail forward, something that allows you to express yourself. And it is all hard skills sort of thing. But it's an environment that was different to your typical subjects. And I mean, I love maths, don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite subjects, but it is one that is very much right or wrong.
Yeah.
There was that element of you needed a teacher to help you determine whether you're right or wrong. There are obviously programs out there, and it's becoming more and more of a self-paced curriculum going forward, but coding has always been that sort of forefront. And to be honest, I feel like coding leads to mathematical inquiry. It's that very theoretical thing, as maths is one of the most theoretical topics we've ever done as a species. It's so theoretical that people don't see the practicality of it. I don't know how many times you've had somebody say, I've never used trigonometry in my life before. Why did we get taught it in high school? And it's unfortunate missed the point of high schools trying to teach you how to learn, and that trigonometry and all these very complicated topics. It's testing your brain. Education is sort of like a factory, and we're slowly starting to break that down. So that's sort of been our approach to kicking off Resolute, is we started off on getting industry into education, but now we've also started to try and address that younger age group of, grade 1 up, getting those important skills, because you can have impactful work in the senior phase in your grade 10 to 12 space, but the biggest impact that you're going to get is in the younger age groups. That's you've got all the thesis and you've got all the articles. It's very, very true. So to really, really fix education, when you start with the teacher and when you start with the younger age groups, because that's the big thing. So why robotics after the whole coding conversation is because it needs to be something practical. If maths is up here as a very theoretical subject, coding links to that, but it's still something that's like a screen. It's like, imagine going to somebody that's never seen a computer before and you're starting to explain the internet to them. There's a huge attachment. But if I can hold a robot in my hands and I can show you this powerful little tool of sensors, wheels, and it's driving along the table, and I can say you can change how it operates by just changing a few blocks on your screen or a few lines of code, you're now starting to see the instantaneous practicality of your actions on this very theoretical field. And it does allow for people to go and investigate a little bit further. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. And then what Resolute's main focus is to then make sure that this philosophy and this ideology actually makes it into the schools, that the students are actually able to execute this through the medium of the teacher. The teacher is our biggest and most important element. We need to make sure that the teacher first, teacher tested, teacher proof sort of concept is there. I think everybody in tech, and especially ed tech, has tried a million ways to teach around the teacher, and they've all failed. It's just, and I can speak to the 100. I'm sure you guys have all seen this. A lot of ed techs will come in there saying, self-paced learning only, and your Udemy's and your Coursera's and your Skillshares and all of these things. But you need the teacher, especially where you want to have that impact. At the younger age group, the teacher needs to be empowered, the teacher needs to be elevated, the teacher needs to be upskilled. And that's also a big part of what we're trying to do here. Give them books, give them training, give them a platform where they can get access to the books, the training, the videos to manage the students. That's a very, very important thing for us. So it has been a lot of iterate, ideate, fail fast, and retreat, get client feedback. So it's that whole design process, that double diamond, we've had to apply into our marketing, into our approach. So yeah, Hanika, to answer that question, how are we in all those schools? We be reckless. We run as fast as we possibly can.
Love that.
Have a good heart in the action of doing that. And I think that's what's led us to this conversation and what I'm excited to, tell people about.
And your model is about, as you say, it's train the trainer, it's upskill the teacher, it's put the tools in their hands. And that's also allowing you, I guess, to scale and to get to places as opposed to you sending in team who has to do it. And I for one, and I want to pass over to some of my, to my other interviewers here sitting around the fire and chatting together. It's the first time that I've really understood the relationship between robotics and coding, that the robotics is kind of the flow out of the coding that gives you that physical thing in your hand. So thank you for helping me understand that more, and also for sharing that story about how it was the thing that you held on to, and that was your safety blanket. We so often bias, coming from the art side, that, a kid who's done drama or a kid who's done sport, and that's what sort of they held on to as they went through the turmoils of childhood or education. But for you and your story about being in remedial school and in dyslexic sort of mind, how that was your way out or your way in or your way to flourishing. So it's incredibly inspiring to hear it in that way. So thanks for sharing that story.
No problem.
Excuse me, hold on. I will get rid of all of this in post. Excuse me. So, Gareth, I am really taken by your journey from often in many educational systems, once you're in a remedial program or put into a sidetrack, it's very hard to get out and to enter, for example, an academic or even in some places we go to vocational systems. And so I think it's quite impressive. No, let me come at this a totally different way. I wonder how your own history with having a learning disability, being neurodivergent in this way, has affected your view on how robotics and coding should work. Traditionally, coding is a text-based system that is notoriously unfriendly to folks with dyslexia. So how has that informed the program that you're building, and has that helped other people be able to engage with the program in ways that you didn't expect, knock-on effects, that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. So, yeah, the first book that I wrote, I tried to use as few words as possible. That was one of my things, because I don't want to have people spell check me and find all those things. But because of the practical nature of it, you can really flip the classroom and also the way that information can be consumed. So if you do question-based learning or practical-based learning, so I would, because I'm a tinkerer at heart, and if I can push that out to other people, so I'd be like, oh, I did this thing, try it. And then I just did a series of those. And that was sort of how I've modeled that ability to get that over to these teachers or these students. So it'd be more like activities that drive them going forward. And obviously theory needs to be taught, and that is the one place that I would say I struggled with as a person with dyslexia, but there's still value in that. It's an important thing to understand that underlying knowledge, but sometimes teaching theory after the practical instead of before the practical enlightens the subject, and it's like I have a tethering element to it. Like if you show somebody a hammer and you show somebody a nail, in theory you'll understand it, but if I just gave you a hammer and a nail and a screw and a screwdriver, and I just left you in a room and I said, put these things up. And then later on, I addressed the thing. What did we use to knock the thing in with? Oh, it's a hammer. And you changed the way that you were teaching it from a theory to practical, rather than a practical to theory. So with the dyslexia, I've always been a little bit like off-standish on heavy text-based learning and consumption through. I mean, yeah, if you ask me how many books have you read, I would say the ones that was forced to me in high school, and that's when I stopped reading. And I can successfully say I probably have only read maybe 5 books in my life, but I've acquired knowledge in other ways, I think. And it's also maybe timing that I would say allowed me to do this. The fact that we have the era of YouTube, the fact that we've got the era of this high speed internet, a lot of things have changed, and education has subsequently evolved, and the way we've learned is now more diverse. And I think with the neurodivergent crew, I would say that text-based typing and coding and all of that sort of stuff, it's evolving to newer and newer levels. And the fact that you've just got like an interpreter, something that can give you instant feedback, check, I don't understand what you're saying, here's a 500 errors, good luck, have fun. And then you go and you just grind your way through that. It teaches a lot of things about grit, 21st century skills. And one of the things that I want to talk about is the skills that kids get outside of coding and robotics, is that 21st century skills. I know there's the 4 C's, but we're trying to push it into a philosophy is 4 C's, 1 G. grit is a really, really important one that I can say that comes through that self-paced learning, but also empowering the teacher to guide that, turning the teacher into that facilitator. Let the practical happen. Don't run to the theory, and then discuss the theory in more of a conversational space post the attempts and the failures, and see if that allows that experiment won't happen again better, if you know what I mean.
I love that quote, I'm a tinkerer at heart. That's stunning. And also your explanation of how you come at things is really, really beautiful. The 4 C's and 1G. I love that as well.
Yes, I have to be honest, Gareth. Before going into this conversation, I thought coding, robotics, that's so different from what I do, and especially technology is sometimes put in a very different corner or bracket. And I think this is why we're here, because it's called the 100 Connected Minds. And when you shared your story, I immediately saw so many connections, and I want to dive deeper into those 21st century skills. I'm in Kenya. We do social emotional learning, and we do it through dance and movement. So also learning by doing, because I don't believe you can learn self-esteem, collaboration through a book. But it doesn't work like that, right? You have to experience and do in order to feel and to really get that skill. So I see a lot of similarities actually in our work. So can you share a story where you see a child working with robotics and all of these skills actually come to life? Could you take us through?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of my favorite stories is so we host a RoboticCon once a year. So it's a robotics competition just to allow for like some sort of competitive element towards the end. And competition is extremely important in not in a like, oh, I won and failed and everybody's a winner kind of thing, that ability to be given a really big challenge at the end of the year. And there's this one kid that I just remember that was just, they were just laser focused. And the competition was to get the robot to drive forward, turn left, pick up a thing, and then drive back. And he was 8 years old and he was doing an if statement inside an if statement. He was doing what I learned in grade 10 and I thought I was advanced, and he was doing it naturally. He was going through that process of like, he was playing while he was learning. And I definitely think like that critical thinking was literally happening in front of my eyes. Like he was running, he was testing, he was ideating, he was iterating, he was thinking. He looked at the robot like, and he just stood there for 10 seconds. It was driving around in circles and he was just looking at it like, other kids was running and picking up their robots as soon as there was a mistake, and he just let it fail. He let the robot do what he told it to do in the wrong way, and he was just sat there and thought. And then I saw something in his eyes, and he just picked up his robot and he ran. And then I just kept watching as I was watching a few like 20 to 50 kids, and then I saw him come back, and it stopped the spinning, and it got to the object. Like he ultimately didn't end up winning, but that wasn't the point. It was that element that I got to see that, and I don't get always to see the opportunity. Like it's not, we're not always observational, but the fact that that happened just once and I was able to observe it was so inspiring to me. So I wouldn't say it hit all four of the criticals of the C's, but it definitely hit that critical thinking one, which was really, really empowering to see. But we do have, obviously, there's a lot of group work required in robotics and coding. You do get kids that are very, like, there's that kid that will sit and look at a broken thing. And then there's a lot of students that are working on like making it applicable to other subjects. And that's also something that I want to talk to you about with coding and robotics. It is a cross-curricular subject. And to be honest, I actually don't even want to call it a subject, because subjects is the worst word we use in school. It's the silos of information, when information is not a silo. It's an experienced landfill. And all I want to say is that the robotics and coding subject is actually more like a vehicle in the Sahara that we've got in front of us, that is education. So it shouldn't be this thing of like, oh, it stays in the showroom and it stays on its little pedestal. Get in the car and drive through the Sahara, go find the lions, go drive in a puddle, go do something. Like robotics is something that does go outside of its subject. I hate it, but we have to
I agree with you. But I haven't really thought about that word in itself being so problematic until you just said it now. And then I thought, what should replace it? Is it a language? Is it a filter? what is robotics and coding? Because I had the same challenge with what we do, and Sherelle does similar work in terms of, we really are like vehement about don't put the arts in a box. Don't put it as an extracurricular. Don't put it, there you go, dance and sing, my kiddies, and come back and think. No, the whole idea is we want to think as we move and we become the character and we express ourselves. And full disclosure, everyone else, the world, and Alex and Sherelle here, myself and Rajesh and Gareth have even dreamt sitting around coffee about how do you take the buzz curricula of, you playing and thinking through the body and through the arts, and you plug that into the everyday learning topic, plus robotics exercises, so that you bring that to the teacher in one holistic way. And that, I guess, leads me to my question that I'm burning to always fight out. I met Gareth and Rajesh at we're part of a fellowship for the MasterCard Foundation through Ingenie here in South Africa. And so I always felt like a bit of an outsider in that group because it's an ed tech fellowship. And I just barely touch tech because we use a bit of tech for our to disperse our curriculum, really. But the curriculum itself isn't tech itself. So my first question in every forum is always, let's define a tech. But the question that we sort of always wrestle with is this question that has already come up here, as well as in many of the MasterCard conversations, etc., Foundation. And that is, what will be the most important skills for the future? So we already mentioned 21st century skills. And I mean, there's different lists of that. And then you've mentioned grit. And I do want to say, for someone who has only read 5 books, maybe number 6 should be Angela Duckworth's Grit. And I think it's available on audiobook, so you can listen to it. So it's phenomenal because I agree with you. Grit is an incredible way to put many of them together. But just opening it to all of us, I guess, for conversation is, if you had to, sometimes people ask on podcasts, if you had to listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would that song be? If you had to say one or two or a few skills that are most important, if we had to choose one or two, what would that be to equip our children for the future? Because the fact is, we don't know, right? We don't know exactly what they're going to face, what challenges and opportunities might be there. And so what would you say it is, starting with Gareth and then opening to the rest of us, most important skills for the future to equip our children with? And then I guess how do we do that?
Yeah, no, it's a fair, difficult, and almost an impossible question. So I would say that it also depends on the age group of the child. So skills at certain phases in a child's life need to be addressed. So I would say your younger audiences is that critical skills. Those 21st century skills, the ability to communicate and collaborate. Those are something that I think as a base we should expect coming out of, say, the age of 9, 10, and to just further their skills. I suppose the skills that we've kind of got in education that we take for advantage, but as much as I am dyslexic, I would say that literacy and numeracy is a skill that we should want outside of our matric students. It's something that's obvious and it's something that's basic, but that married with digital literacy, the ability to, say, use this platform, the ability to send emails, and now with this wave of artificial intelligence looming over everybody's head, worried about if every skill is democratized, what skill do we grow? I would say the ability to use tech is now going to be at that level. Like, this is the new wave of the internet. Artificial intelligence is going to have as much of a change on society as the invention of the internet, the invention of the transistor and the light bulb, modern transportation. To not have that as a part of the minimum criteria as like literacy and numeracy, I think digital literacy, if somebody doesn't have that, it's almost like they don't have literacy. And speaking as somebody that is kind of, I don't want to call myself illiterate, but I struggle with literacy. The fact that I've used tech to overcome that, the fact that there's tools out there that allow me to get around that, I would say digital literacy is, maybe if that was the one song that I could sing for the rest of my life, it would be digital literacy. Not typical. It's a little bit of a tricky selection because it doesn't just say typing skills. It's the ability to use tech, and it's the ability to think critically with tech. So that would be, if I had to choose just one skill. Obviously, I'd love to choose literacy and numeracy, but if I had to choose just the one, I would choose digital literacy. That's the best answer I can get.
You went with my metaphor and I like it. And mine would be creativity. So mine would be like the ability to create. And you're saying like we take those things together, and I think that's the dream. I'm actually, my son's going to grade 1, and we were looking at schools And to be honest with you, I've been like hard on them about their creative arts and their robotics and coding. I'm like, this better be good. So digital skills and for me, creativity. How about the rest of you guys? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because I wanted to take it back to not only Kenya, but since we're in the majority on the African continent, take it back to what's happening in our countries. And I'm really excited, Hanneke, when you said Resolute is everywhere, because there's probably a market here for you as well. And I don't think robotics is as big. But in the Kenya competency-based curriculum, which is all around competencies, was implemented 7 years ago by the national government. And digital literacy is one of the core components. So this is really on the agenda. But then the next step is the how, right? Kenya and South Africa, they differ. We have different countries around us. So how do we actually get this coding? Or if we talk about digital literacy, especially in communities in areas where we don't have certain resources, and it might not be top of the agenda because of the resources. Like, where is that space for digital literacy in the future of education, but specifically in countries where we struggle with resources?
Oh, it's a very, very fair question. I mean, in South Africa, we've got 26,000 schools, 21 of which don't have like the bare minimum requirements to even run a computer app. I mean, talk about your your scales of economy, but more
21,000, right?
20,000. Sorry, I meant to say
Yeah,
21,000.
yeah. Just to be
21
clear on the
out of 20,
situation.
yes, yeah, out of 26,000. So it is, it's a difficult problem because to teach digital literacy, you actually need digital equipment, you need internet, you need power, you need devices. And the one that we always forget is you also need professional development for your teachers to use it. So the strategy that we've employed right now has been focusing on schools that are already set up with the equipment, but it's to also now start urging governments to focus on the things that are important, which is set your schools up properly. Schools are not what they used to be or what we can expect them to have been in the last 200 to 400 centuries. Like, it now needs to be at another level. We need to think cleverly. I mean, I've been to some phenomenal schools where they have literally a round room. They've architected it so there's a round room, and all that room is for is discussion. They don't have anything else in that room. They never do anything else. There's a room that's just, it's separate. The the access to the internet is something I don't even think I have to motivate it, because it's so it's impossibly important that, yeah. And with this whole SpaceX and the Starlink invention, internet, it's accessible. It's just where we put our capital and where we invest our time and money. I think just a Starlink thing that just allows even just the teachers to get access to the internet in these rural schools will take the school from an inactive school to an active school within 2 to 5 years minimum, within that range. If they've just got the ability to listen to these sorts of conversations, to see what else is on the internet, be exposed to YouTube, be even the ed techs that aren't the most powerful, like your Udemy's and all these self-paced ones, it will change these teachers' lives, which will change these children's lives, which will ultimately change society. So the how would be to focus on a government level and say, can you allocate a small portion of your budget to accessibility and democratizing this tech wall that we've got between the haves and the have-not, because it is growing the poverty gap. It's killing our skills. It's changing all these things. And now that artificial intelligence is out there, it's in a state of quantum state. It can be extremely good or it can be extremely bad. And the more people that are left out of the conversation, it just leans more towards the bad. So I would say the how would be just investing, and these Starlink things aren't that expensive. Network and infrastructure isn't that expensive in comparison to everything else we spend millions on a global scale. Education and tech, that infrastructure of just like, Hanneke, if your videos were just naturally accessible to twice the amount of people just because of infrastructure.
We're trying to link what the three of you all have been talking about earlier. So, Gareth, you were talking about how, as AI is becoming more important, what is it going to mean to interact with these skills? And Hanneke, you were talking about how you believe that creativity should be the skill that we bring forward. And as I was thinking about where these two intersect, I'm reminded of the computational thinking skills, which is the idea of being able to look at a problem, break it down into the component steps, and then have the troubleshooting capacity to work iteratively through these. And I really think that that is where the creativity comes into it, right? Because you're faced with a problem and then you need to find a creative, honestly, generally an artistic way of facing it. And I'm reflecting right now on my own experience, my own recent experience with coding and with AI. In my thesis, I had to learn a new coding language, and I am an okay coder, right? I would not call myself a highly accomplished one, but I was using the Copilot tools in GitHub, which is through AI. I think it's based out of ChatGPT at some point. I'm not sure how it's all a black box, and that's what it comes down to with AI is that it is a black box and we can't really know what's happening. But as AI, especially coding tools, become more powerful, you're now able to go into ChatGPT and say, write me a program that will, count how many times I water my plant in a week or whatever, something like this. You no longer necessarily need to be able to type the words in, but you still need to have those skills to say, is this doing what I need it to do? What do I need it to do? And what kinds of ways do I need to think to change it in the future? We've seen some really amazing innovations over the past couple of years that are focusing on teaching those skills without using technology at all. And so I think that those skills are a good way to be building up the capacity within the populations, especially for those students who have the kinds of schools that you've been talking about that lack that basic infrastructure, but also lack the electric infrastructure, the internet infrastructure, and all of this. And so, when we think about Chesa Chesa and dance, when you're figuring out how to collaborate, how to orchestrate, how to move together, you still have to think in these problem solving ways. You still have to think computationally, even how do I move my arm in the way that I want it to for it to do this stuff? So I think, of course, there's so many skills that need to be part of what we bring forward. But if I think in the vein of this conversation, and Gareth, I'd love to know how this hits for you.
No, you're spot on, and I think computational thinking, the way of that you've linked mine and Hanneke's conversations together of digital skills and creativity through computational thinking, it's a beautiful little piece that you've put on top of our two building blocks. So yeah, I definitely can't disagree. Computational thinking is an extremely important one, and it's something that can also even be taught without digital infrastructure. Yeah, 100%. And I'll say that even though AI is sort of democratizing the skill of coding, there's still so much value in somebody that's gone through the exercise of learning to code. I can comfortably say when I speak to somebody that's come from the world of programming versus somebody that hasn't come from the world of programming, they speak and think differently. You might not need to know what an if statement is in the syntax or a loop in structure, but the concept of an if statement and a loop, it's literally, it's pieces, it's how we make decisions as people, but it's going through that process of defining it and then putting it into a machine to replicate that over and over. So you see, and then when you get really creative about like putting a for loop into an if statement and an if statement inside another if statement, like when you get really, like when they've played with these building blocks, they think differently about how they solve problems and just getting to work, making their coffee, running their lives, even putting an argument together of how they're going to get their points across. They have the ability to just quickly, because they've played with these building blocks a lot. And it is maybe it's something that I resonate a lot more with because of how my brain is neurodivergent and all of those things. But I found that that skill in computational thinking of being able to break a problem down, pattern recognize, organize things, and then come up with an algorithm at the end of the day to solve that problem forever it's sustainable thinking. It's the ability to ensure that what you do affects more than one. So it's sustainable and scalable. Yeah, I can definitely say computational thinking is one of those really, really out there. So, I mean, those are three good skills that I could say we've seen come out of here: creativity, digital literacy, and also computational thinking. I can comfortably round that out. Yeah.
Always ask this question at the end of our conversation to every guest, and every time we hear an answer, we're inspired, surprised, not to put any pressure on you. But our question is, what is your hope or dream for the future of education?
Oh, yeah. I would like education to work. Just that would be enough. Like what we expect from education, for that to be actually the delivered expectation. I know that we always think education is working, but there's so much pressure on education. So if I had a nirvana situation, like my dream, it'd be that that education could meet our expectations. And I say it in a bad way, but just work, that would be that would be phenomenal. But yeah, I think it's maybe an impossibility, but that would be the nirvana, that would be the ultimate goal. I hope that's the best answer.
Sometimes the simplest answers are the best, like just for it to do its job, and in many places in Africa, that's absolutely still lacking. But so we agree for education to work. And thank you very much for your time today and for the beautiful work you're doing and the people you're employing and the teachers you're upskilling. And thank you. And may we all just work together to continue to improve it for many more kids. Thanks, everyone.
Do you have an education innovation you want to share with the world? The call for the 2026 Global Collection is now open. Apply at 100.org.